Hello and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article says the move to ease voting for overseas citizens. Let us try and understand what is this article all about. When we speak about the right to vote, this is a constitutional right which is guaranteed in the Constitution of India. Added to it, there are other legal provisions as well. The statutory provisions are contained under the Representation of the People's Act of 1950. Then we also have the Representation of the People's Act of 1951. There are other rules that are also included. One such rules are the Conduct of Election Rules of 1961, Registration of the Electors Rules of 1960. So this is the legal framework that we have when it comes to the right to vote. So this is at the national level. When it comes to the international level, internationally, the right to vote and the right to public participation in government is also recognized as the basic human right. Let us discuss about the Universal Declaration of the Human Rights, Article 21. Article 21 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights says that everyone has the right to take part in the government of his country directly or through freely chosen representatives. Everyone has the right to equal access to public services in his country. The will of the people shall be the basis of the authority of the government. This shall be expressed in periodic and genuine elections, which shall be by universal and equal suffrage, and shall be held by secret vote or by equivalent free voting procedures. So, on one side, we saw that the Constitution of India recognizes the right to vote. We also have the legal framework as well, and at the international level, this is also assigned as a basic human right. This is what the Universal Declaration of Human Rights says as per Article 21. Apart from this, we also have the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which also provides that every citizen has the right and opportunity with respect to the right to vote, irrespective of the discrimination. If they are meeting the universal adult suffrage, then they should be given the right to vote, says the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. So, what are we discussing here? We are discussing about the right to vote. Now, if we have to focus about the right to vote can be further segmented into two types of people. One are the individuals who are present in the country, they are eligible to vote. Then there are other set of people who have migrated to another country for the employment opportunities, for the education opportunities, so on and so forth. So this article here is not focusing on the people who are present in the country, but instead it is focusing on the non-resident Indian. So the question is, who are these non-resident Indians? A non-resident Indian is an Indian citizen who resides in India for less than 182 days during the course of the preceding financial year, who has gone out of India or who stays outside India for the purposes of employment, who has gone out of India or who stays outside India for carrying on business or occasion outside India, and who has gone out of India or who stays outside India for any other purpose, indicating his intention to stay outside India for an uncertain period. So what do we understand? The non-resident Indians are Indians who hold an Indian passport, who are the citizens of India. They haven't got their passports converted into some other country's nationality. Instead, they hold the Indian passport but are not in the country for more than 182 days. Why are we discussing this? That is because the government is looking at multiple provisions to provide right to vote to these people who are present outside the country. Now let us try and understand what are the different mechanisms as to how these NRIs can be given an option to right to vote. This can be broken down into two compartments. One is prior to the year 2010. Then what we have to consider is after 2010. Prior to 2010, an Indian citizen who is an eligible voter was residing abroad for more than 6 months would not have been able to vote in the elections. What does this mean? We did just discuss who is an NRI. Any person who has not lived in India for more than 182 days in that financial year is called as a non-resident Indian. So this person prior to 2010 did not have the right to vote. But after 2010, what we had was major amendments that was introduced, and that is in reference to the Representation of the People Amendment Act of 2010. So what would happen after the passing of the Representation of the People Amendment Act 2010? All those who were eligible, who were above 18 years of age, were allowed to vote in India. Prior to 2010, if they were living in other country for more than 180 days, they did not have the permission. But after this amendment, they had the permission given by the government of India. So what would happen under this? Under this particular amendment that was done after 2010, what would happen? This would be like any other citizen of the country. Let's say, for example, what would I do? In case there are elections that are conducted in my state or for the MP elections, I would go to the polling booth, cast my vote to the political candidate as well as to the political party. So I, as an individual who's staying in India, will be able to cast my vote. Similarly, an NRI can come down to India. There would be an address on his passport. So whatever address is present on his or her passport, he would be able to go to that particular constituency. He would be able to cast his vote for the state or the national elections. So basically, he has to register, and after this he would be able to do so by coming back to India. So after 2010, what was he given? He was given an option that, dear NRI, you can come down to India. Whatever address you have on your passport, you can go to that particular constituency and vote for your political candidate and the party of your liking. So this was the major change that was introduced in 2010. What is the major problem here? We have people from United States of America, we have people in West Asia as well. All these people have their own personal commitments. They also have to work as well. They have to take care of their business commitments. These people may not come to India just for the sake of voting. That is one part. Added to it, if they have to come back to India and vote, this will require a lot of expenses from their side. They have to book the tickets, they have to come back to India. Then this means they're shelling out a lot of money, which means they did not want to come back to India only for the sake of voting. That is why we had the government of India thinking at multiple levels as to how we can engage the non-resident Indians into this active political process. So in the year 2017, in the winter session of the parliament, the government proposed a bill which provided overseas voters to be able to appoint a proxy to cast their votes on their behalf, subject to conditions laid down in the Conduct of Election Rules of 1961. What was this bill all about? Basically, the government gives the permission to the NRIs. The dear NRIs, yes, we understand that you do not have the time, and at the same time you have to come down to India to cast your vote, which is an expensive process. So we are giving you an option. You can appoint a proxy. Who is a proxy? Let's say, for example, I have my brother in United States of America, or I have my sister in United States of America, or I have my wife in United States of America. They are not able to come down to India. So in this particular backdrop, they give me the permission. I am the proxy for them, so I vote on their behalf going to the polling booth. So it can be any relationship. So that relationship is given the permission so that they would be able to cast the vote on behalf of their spouse, their brother, sister, so on and so forth. But this particular bill did not fructify. Why? Because it ultimately lapsed and it did not come into reality. Added to it, there have been multiple other attempts as well, and one such attempts the government is looking at, the Election Commission of India has suggested to the government of India, is what is called as electronically transmitted postal ballot system. So let us try and understand what is this electronically transmitted postal ballot system. When we speak about the electronically transmitted postal ballot system, this is currently in implementation with respect to the service voters. Who are the service voters? Let's say, for example, members of the armed forces of the Union, members of a force to which provisions of the Army Act are applicable, members of an armed police force of a state who are serving outside their state, and persons who are employed under the government of India in a post outside India. What do we mean by post outside India? Let's say, for example, we have the ambassadors, diplomats, and people working in the embassies and the consulates, and also include, it is not only those people, in case they are accompanied by their wife, they are also given the permission. So what would happen? Under the service voters, these people would be sent what is called as the postal ballots on an electronic medium. How does this work? Basically, you would have these service voters. The service voters are sent an email. The email will be a copy of the political candidate who will be contesting in a constituency. So it will be a paper. Imagine this as a paper. So this printout has to be taken by the service voters, and they also have a two-factor security as well. One in the form of PIN, the other in the form of security given to the officers. So basically, they are sent an email. This email will have to be taken a printout of. They can give a clarity, they can stamp it on the political party and the candidate that they want to, and ultimately they have to send it via the normal post. So basically, on one side they are sent an email, they have to take a printout of it, cast their vote, but while sending it will not be done via that email, but instead they have to send it via the post. So basically, when we are speaking about this postal ballot system, the post will also include an attested declaration form by the service voter, and when it is being sent via the post, this will have to reach the returning officer by 8 a.m. on the day of the counting of the results. These are some of the important rules that are mentioned when it comes to the postal ballot system. So the Election Commission of India has given similar such proposal for the NRIs who are present in some other country. How does this work? In case of NRI workers, those seeking to vote through ETPBS will have to inform the returning officer at least 5 days after notification of the election. So we have the Election Commission of India which releases the notification. So the NRI will have to immediately tell the returning officer. Who is the returning officer? The head of that particular constituency. He says the returning officer that he wants to take part in the electoral process, that he wants to cast his vote to the political candidate as well as to the political party. So what will the returning officer do? The returning officer will then send the ballot electronically via the ETPBS, and eventually the NRI voter can register his or her mandate on the ballot printout and send it back with an attested declaration in a process similar to that of the service voter. The senior officer who is also present in that particular country, it can be a diplomat or an embassy or a consulate office, would be appointed by the Indian diplomatic or consular representative in the resident country. They also look into it, and ultimately this process will be accomplished. But there is a slight confusion here. We did say that when it comes to the service voters, they have to send it via the post, but in this particular case, the Election Commission of India has yet not clarified whether it is the embassy which will take care of it or it is that person who has to post it to the country. So that is a slight confusion which the Election Commission of India is yet to announce. So what are the advantages if the NRIs are given the permission to cast an vote via this particular process of postal ballot system? Giving them the voting right will be a logical consequence of the universal franchise. We did discuss about the constitutional right. We did also discuss that the international laws also says that it is a basic human right. Since there is constitutional right, since there is international right to it, if this person is given that right, he is ensuring that there is a universal franchise given to that particular individual. And whenever we speak about Indians, NRIs are also Indians. They put in a lot of remittances as well. They will have their houses in India. They are also paying the taxes as well. So why not give them the permission? Since they are already taking part in the country's process by paying the taxes, they also send remittances to their near and dear ones, and some of them also come back to India and go back as well, and they do have a lot of transactions. So increased contributions by the NRIs to the welfare activities in the country means that they should also be given the power to right to vote as well. In fact, the external voting is also permitted in more than 50 countries as well. Since many countries are doing this, India being one of the largest democracy, India should also initiate such process. These are some of the advantages. There are also issues and concerns as well. When it comes to India, the voting turnout has been abysmal of late. Let's say for example, in number of constituencies it is 50%, in number of constituencies it is 60%. In number of constituencies, it is even less as well. So even if it is opened up for the NRIs in multiple other countries, this may not be productive as the number of people who would cast their vote would be comparatively less. And when we speak about countries, we also know for the fact that when it comes to the Indian embassies, they already have a significant load of work, and they do not also have resources as well. They do not also have manpower as well. It is also being said that they are understaffed as well, and as a result, ensuring a smooth and transparent voting procedure would also put burden on the officers. They are already understaffed, but if extra load of work is given to them, this will also mean that they may not be able to engage it in a successful way. These are some of the issues and concerns. So are postal ballots a viable means of voting? Yes. With increasing mobility of citizens across country for reasons related to work, postal ballot method has been recognized by the International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance. So probably we can engage it on a pilot basis, see how it works, and eventually implement it, is what is this article all about. Now let's look into the next article. This article says the era of an unemployed India. What is this article speaking about? When we speak about the unemployment crisis in India, we know for the fact that there is a large scale unemployment in India. The unemployment has also increased when it comes to the COVID-19, and the unemployment crisis was also present even prior to the COVID-19 as well. If we look into the statistics, National Sample Survey says it reported a 6.1% unemployment rate in 2017 and 18, the worst in over 4 decades. So what do we actually see? We see that there is a lot of unemployment when it comes to India. Added to the unemployment crisis, what is the major problem in India? Added to the unemployment crisis, there are overqualified youth who are aspiring for the middle and lower rank government jobs. What do we mean by it? Let's say, for example, there is a job notification released by the government of India, job notification released by the government of respective states, let's say for a peon position or for a driver position. Who would actually apply for these roles? It will be a person who is not past SSLC, or it might be a person who is past SSLC. So there is a particular role that a person would be awarded, and this will not require any educational qualification, or even if the educational qualification is required, it is the bare minimal education level. It can be the 10th standard, or it can be the PUC, or in multiple other cases it can be a diploma or a basic degree. But what is happening of late? Whenever there is a job notification released by the government of India or the respective state governments, there are overqualified individuals who are applying to that particular role. Let's say, for example, if it is only 10th standard that is required or 12th standard that is required, there are also people who hold the engineering degrees. There are also people who hold the master degrees. There are also people who even hold PhDs as well. They are also applying to such positions. Let's take some of the examples. When it comes to the Railway Recruitment Board, they had a job role for the Group C. Under this, there were about 35,000 posts, but the number of applications that they received was about 1.25 crore applications. In September 2021, news report highlighted that among 18,000 applicants for some 42 posts, which is for peon, gardener, and cook in the Himachal Pradesh Secretariat, there were hundreds of doctorate and other postgraduate applicants. Let's take another example. March 2021, more than 27,000 candidates with degrees such as BA, BSc, MA, MSc, MCom, MBA, even engineer, etc., had applied for 13 positions for a peon's job in the Panipat district court. What do we understand from this? Yes, there is unemployment crisis in the country, which the government is trying to reduce by coming up with number of skill programs. But in spite of it, what is happening? That there is overqualified youth who are not able to find the jobs, and they are applying to the government jobs in the country. This is where we have to understand that there is some fundamental problem, and we also have to understand as to why are people looking for the government jobs. Let us try and understand what are the reasons. We have the labor laws in the country. The labor laws means that if a person is employed in one of the companies will have to respect some of the labor rights. These are the labor laws. So we have labor laws. These labor laws are also on the statute books, but when it comes to the implementation, it is not effectively implemented. And when we speak about the private sector, what are the major issues in the private sector? There is job insecurity, that is, there is hire and fire policy. Then you also have the payment that is paid, which may be comparatively less, and you also have long hours of work as well. In spite of the laws that are present in the labor laws, that there has to be a particular amount of time which has to be stipulated for working about 8 hours or 9 hours. What does private sector do? They make sure that these people work for 11 to 12 hours, so they have long hours when it comes to the private sector. That may not be seen in the government sector, which is why people opt for the government sector. So the first major issue is the labor laws. Yes, there are labor laws, but these are not effectively used. There is job security in the government that is not the same in the private sector, because in private sector there is hiring and firing. They also pay less, and at the same time there is long hours of working in the private sector, which is not generally seen in the government sector. The third major concern is with respect to the privatization. What is happening? The government of late is privatizing number of sectors, which means those job profiles which are originally present in the government have now been privatized as well, and in number of jobs they have been contractual working as well. So the number of jobs that are originally present with the government were more, so even if the people were applied, they were all accommodated in the government sector. But of late, because they are being privatized, it is now under the private sector, or some of it is also contextualized as well. And as a result, the number of seats in the government have reduced over a period of time, but the number of people applying for these government seats have increased, which means there are more people applying for the limited number of jobs. Then what we have to look at is at the educational aspect as well. When we speak about the education, our education system is more about memorization. Our education system is more about mugging up formulas. We do not know the practical reality of the application. Why do the people opt for the government jobs? That is because they are still running on the traditional system of recruitment, and when it comes to the private sector jobs, it is more about application orientation. Let's take the example of the engineering colleges. There are large number of engineering colleges in India, but when they read, when they study, the syllabus is not meeting the intended standards, that which is required for the direct recruitment of these engineers. So what will these engineers do? Yes, they do have a degree, but they do not have the skill set. They are not able to meet to the industrial standards. So what do? They will instead apply for the government jobs, which will give them the security. So instead of learning using the skills to meet the industrial standards, which has to be established via the education mode, since the education is not meeting the intended standards, yes, we have the BE holders, we also have other holders of degrees as well. Since they do not know the practical reality, they will not be recruited by the industries, and these people ultimately end up in the government jobs where they are actually not required in that particular position. And finally, we have the government of India and the respective states ideally should increase the expenditure. Let's say for example in the education sector, or let's say for the example in the health sector, or it should initiate number of social welfare schemes and programs. When they initiate such social welfare schemes and programs, this will obviously mean you will need the executive authorities who will be able to implement these schemes and programs. But of late, the number of programs are contractualized, which means they are also outsourced as well. So you do not require number of these profiles which had to be created for the educational purposes, health purposes, as well as the social welfare schemes and programs. If you bring in all these modules, ultimately means the number of people required for the enforcement of these programs will be more. But since the government is not creating these portfolios or the executive means and mechanisms, which is why the number of government jobs have reduced over a period of time, and this ultimately means that the number of seats or the number of opportunities have reduced over a period of time, but the number of people applying for the government jobs have exponentially increased. Looking at all these arguments, we can say that there are two types of people who have the major crisis. One is for those who have the BE degrees, they have the master degrees, they also have the doctorates as well. Just because they do not have the skill set, just because they do not have the entrepreneurship mindset, just because they're not able to upskill themselves, they are currently unemployed, or they are applying to those profiles which is not suitable for their capability. Because these people ultimately end up applying for such jobs, those people like the 10 standards and the 12 standard pass outs will have to compete with them, and ultimately they may also not get the job as well. On one side, these people are supposed to get the job if you're going by the principle of equality, but they're not suitable for the job. And if you're looking at 10th and 12th standard pass outs, because there is a cutthroat competition from the degree holders, they may also lose out on their job opportunities. This is where there was one of the case that was asked before the Madras High Court. There were overqualified candidates, and these candidates were not appointed for the menial jobs. So what did the Madras High Court say? It said that there is a large scale unemployment problem in our country, and unfortunately engineering degree holders, agriculture degree holders and other professional degree holders were participating in the recruitment process which was meant for group 4 services. So it immediately ordered the state government of Tamil Nadu to come up with another notification where it also prescribes minimum qualification and also maximum qualification for that particular role. So you cannot just leave it open, but instead you have to ensure that if the minimum qualification is given, the maximum qualification should also be given, such that those who do not have the degree do not lose out on the opportunities. And at the same time, the Madras High Court also said that if we are recruiting those with the degree to, let's say, the position of the peon or to the position of the driver, the administrative efficiency also loses out. Why? Let's say, for example, these people have a degree, so they have a superiority complex that they wouldn't want to work as well. If it is a person who's just passed out 10 standard or 12 standard, he will meet the demands, he will also listen to the orders of his bosses. But there might be a person holding a degree who may not listen to his bosses, and ultimately this will reduce the efficiency level in the public administration. So the Madras High Court directed the Tamil Nadu government to prescribe maximum qualification to such job roles, for example in group C or in the group D services. So what is that we have to understand here? So we understand that apart from the unemployment crisis in India, we also have overqualified people who applied for menial jobs where they were not supposed to even apply. So what we have to do is we have to change all these important arguments. That is, the labor laws will have to be revamped. It should be not just on the paper, it should also be executed as well. So we require inspectors, we also require the executive agency, and at the same time the education should not be based on memory based, but instead it should be application based, and the government should also increase the expenditure when it comes to some of the fundamental objectives like education, health and social welfare, whereby more recruitment can be done. And contractual employment should be eliminated as much as possible so that permanent employment can be given an option. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says US cuts a deal with EU for LNG. What is the context? The US President Joe Biden has struck a deal with the European Union to supply liquefied natural gas. Under this deal, the US will supply 15 billion cubic meters of LNG to European Union in the year 2022. Further, the European Union will import additional LNG of at least 50 BCM until 2030 from the United States of America. Why is this being done? That is because most of the European Union countries are completely reliant on gases that are imported from Russia. If you have to look into the statistics, Europe relies on Russian exports to meet about 40% of its natural gas requirements and about a quarter of its crude oil needs. Germany and many other countries in Eastern Europe depend on Russia to meet more than 80% of their natural gas needs. So basically, in order to reduce complete dependence on Russia, what we have is Europe European Union countries which are trying to diversify their sources, and one such diversification is import of the gases from United States of America. Does this mean that European Union countries will not be reliant on Russia and can be completely dependent on United States of America? No. In spite of the supply by United States of America, the European Union countries will still have to rely on Russia. Russia had supplied over 150 BCM of gas to the European Union in 2021, and the fresh supply of gas from the US to Europe this year will only be about 15 BCM. Yes, with this particular import from United States of America, they would be diversifying, but they still may have to be reliant when it comes to Russia as well. So what is the other major issues? When it comes to import of natural gas or the LNG from Russia, how does it work? It is being delivered through the pipeline. So this will be an easy mode as Russia will be connected to many other European countries by the pipes. But if you are importing via the United States of America, it will be once again a costly affair. And added to it, if it is importing from United States of America, they have to build additional LNG terminals to process fresh supplies of LNG, and this can take a lot of time because they have to construct these LNG terminals. But if it is from Russia, this need not be done so. And at the same time, what is European Union doing? It is not completely reliant on Russia, but instead it has diversified its sources so that its reliance on Russia can be comparatively reduced. What lies ahead for the European Union? As of now, we saw for the fact that Russia had invaded Ukraine, which means that many other European countries will have to become self-reliant, will also have to diversify their sources. They may also have to increase the budget when it comes to the defense, and at the same time, they can also explore other resources as well. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Election Commission of India's proposal to extend postal ballot facility for NRIs will transform the electoral politics in the country. Comment. Discuss the possible reasons as to why overqualified candidates seek middle and lower rank government jobs in India. So please write all your answers on the comment section, peer review, and do give positive feedback to your friends' answers. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.